I think we've gotten more formal. And I think the best conferences that I can think back to were ones that were at camps, were at some kind of distant location. It didn't have to be horribly rustic, but it was helpful to be away. And to be away in such a way that people didn't have access to TV, they didn't have a bar or place to go. It was really, folks were there as sort of a captive audience, which meant so that if I went to a presentation in the morning, then I had the opportunity at lunch, because we were all eating together, and at dinner, because we were all eating together, and at the social in the evening to chat with them. And we were all kind of confined. We were all there. We had only one another to interact with and to chat with, and those were really the best ones in my view, because you really did have a chance to get to know one another at multiple levels. And you know, sitting around with a beer in the evening is a really nice way to get to know people. While it's important to prepare for your presentation and do well in that, I mean, you're in the spotlight for those 15 minutes or half hour or whatever, and sure, you'll want to do very, very well. But I think the key thing would be to find opportunities to get to meet and know other folks. It's really the faculty are going to be fairly constant. The students are, of course, rotating through. But it's nice to be able to meet up with students that you'll see again next year and maybe the next year, and that you can look and see where there are some commonalities, where there are opportunities potentially for people to potentially work together sometime off in the future. And I think that's the thing that there is sometimes a tendency to spend time chatting with the people that you know, and I think it's critically important that people spend time chatting with those that they don't know, so that they build these relationships. I mean, if I go back to the time that you know, still now 33 years ago, now actually probably 35 years ago or so, with the first ECHO conference, there are people there that I met at that time that I still view as my friends and colleagues, and some of them, like Jim Emshoff, I met Jim there, but also met people like Chris Keys and Lenny Jason there, and they've been, you know, friends for years and years. And so my hope is that students would be able to go and to be able to get to know the faculty and students from other programs, and maybe, if they're lucky, build on some sort of build some relationships and make some connections that'll last for, if you're lucky, 30 years or so. Indiana hosted, and I was in charge of making sure that people were in housing, as I hinted at in saying about staying in Bill Davidson's attic. It was a very finished and very nice attic, by the way. But that I was in charge of housing, and we'd stay in other people's, you know, in the students and faculty members' homes. And the University of Tennessee crowd came, and they had a van load of 9 people that came up to Bloomington, Indiana for the conference, and they refused to be divided up into different people's houses. So since I was the one who was responsible for housing, that meant all 9 of them stayed at my house. and so, you know, something, if you ever talk to Greg Meissen, who was a graduate student at the time, he and I got to be good friends as a result of that time. They're staying on our floor and hide a bed and wherever else they could find room, and they're going out to the Bluebird for music that night and coming back in at 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Wow. but that was part of the culture of going to ECHO conferences, where you'd get to know people, you'd do things together, and it was part of that connecting with one another.
Nice. So what would you say the original purpose of the early ECO conferences were? And you kind of hit on that, but is there anything else?
Well, I mean, I think the same thing that exists now, and that's an opportunity for students to share their work and get to know one another. I think it's a really good opportunity for undergraduates to get to know something about the cultures of programs they might be interested in applying to.
Right.
The getting to know the faculty, and the fact that it's a student-run and supportive environment. It's a great first conference for people to present at. And they can hone their skills and get good feedback from people and that sort of thing. A group of our students had gone down to Atlanta for a conference there, for one of the ECHO conferences that was hosted there. And there was a time between the conference activities and the traditional party at Jim's house, Jim Emshoff's house. And so I was asking John Peterson, and I didn't know John real well, a faculty member at Georgia State. And so I said, well, where's a really good place we could go that would get sort of traditional Southern, what would exemplify Atlanta's cooking?
Yeah.
And so he said, I got the perfect place for you. It's kind of out of the way. I'll take you there. So we followed him in his car after the conference to go there. And we went to Mary Mac's Tea Room, if any of you know that. And when we got there, we found it was a 45-minute wait. And so John said, well, let me just take you on a walking tour of the area. So we walked around for about 45 minutes, going to the Fox Theater and going to lots of different places around in there. It was just great. And John had not been planning to eat dinner with us, but he then ended up saying, well, I'll just stay and eat. So it was my 7 students and John, and we had a lovely dinner. But what was particularly nice was the opportunity for my graduate and undergraduate students to get to know John over a nice informal dinner where he could hear about what they were working on, what their research was. They could find out what kind of research he did. And it was just a delightful dinner and time to connect. And my students have ever since, when talking about that ECHO conference, that was the highlight of it. It was going to dinner with John. And because there was that opportunity to make that connection that we would never make under other sets of circumstances.
Right.
And I think that's been the key value of being able to go and connect up with people. I mean, again, people that I saw growing up professionally. Gabe Coopermink is a good example of that. And I always look forward to going back and seeing the faculty, the students that I've seen from the year before, and I think it's been really nice to have those sorts of... I look forward to seeing you there.